Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host.
Quiet on the set.
Welcome back to Below the Line's 7th annual Oscar series. This is episode 10, and we are in the home stretch with the Academy Awards less than 2 weeks away. Whether you're listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube, I hope you're enjoying the season. Today's category is costume design, and once again, we've got returning guests. First, Liz Vastola, whose credits include Twisted Metal, Daredevil, and The Bondsman. Welcome back, Liz.
Thank you.
Next, Austin Wittick, whose credits as an assistant costume designer include Beef, The Penguin, and Blade Runner 2099. Glad you could join us, Austin.
Thanks for having us, Skid.
And rounding out our panel is Allison Choi Braun. Your credits as a costume designer include Outlaw Chronicles, Hell's Angels, and a bunch of indie features, such as Dr. Brinks and Dr. Brinks. It's great to see you again.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to dive right in. Let's talk movies. The 2025 films recognized for achievement in costume design are Avatar, Fire and Ash, Frankenstein, Hamnet, Marty Supreme, and Sinners. We're going to discuss them in that order, and spoilers are possible, so consider this a warning. When I introduce each film, I'll also recognize the costume designer by name. Please accept my apologies in advance for any mispronunciations. My guests, of course, are welcome, dare I say, encouraged to correct me. Okay, first up, Avatar, Fire and Ash, costume design by Deborah L. Scott.
So Deborah designed all three of James Cameron avatars. So they have like a long history, and they met during Titanic. And for me, I actually had the joy of going to like one of the previews and seeing a lot of the costumes in person, and they were super impressive. And I didn't realize, but they ended up making all of the costumes beforehand. They made like over 3,000 pieces, which is insane, from like the jewelry to like all the wovens and the textiles and the headpieces. And for me, that was super impressive, because I think for a lot of people, they might not think, not having a live action movie, like, why should this be nominated for best costumes? But I mean, they were designing those costumes for years. The world building for the costume design like took years in development, and they like taking things from like real life, but then figuring out how to like reinterpret that so it makes sense for Pandora, which is really impressive. And then for the character development portion of it, figuring out like what each clan, like how their environment informs their costume. So whether or not they're in the water, they're in the air, they're on the land, they're farmers. It was just so incredible to see. And then just the execution and then the believability, because they had to make it first, and then the actors would wear it, and then they'd film it, and then they would give it to Weta workshop, and then they would make it into CG. So I was really blown away by the whole process. I come from a background of like textiles and fibers, so to see that and just to know that like they beaded everything by hand, and they took like natural fibers and they made it look like feathers when they weren't always feathers, or they'd take leather and they would just pound it and re-dye it. And I was a big fan of actually the costumes of this movie, so I'm definitely glad it was nominated.
Other thoughts about what caught your eye for this one?
Do you want to go first, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things too that I felt was so incredible about her work on this project is, even in all the sort of intricacy and attention to craft and detail, she was still able to sort of like pull out and achieve some incredibly iconic looks in the styling and in the color choice. I mean, the lead sort of villain with the red feather headdress and the sort of the color palette of her whole group of white and red and black. And, these are color combinations and that we've seen for years, but somehow she was able to breathe like a new life and a really fresh uh, ideas and shapes and overall sort of effect into like the bads of the movie. And um, I think that to me it struck me because I think now that we're on the third Avatar, we're used to the color palette of the sort of bioluminescence, and we're used to um, Pandora, and obviously that like electric blue, and then the second movie brought this green turquoise color in. The ability to kind of like totally arrest all of that imagery with this new kind of influx of this new palette and this like really just incredible headdress shape, and how that kind of worked into the characterization. I love that move, and I love the design of that group in the movie.
Yeah. Um, Allison had mentioned the fact that like people could think that just because this like why is it being nominated even though it's like not a live action movie, but I think that it's great that it is because I think if we could get like other movies that are digital but have the ability to have costume departments like this, I think it would kind of expand the like possibilities for like so many different chances to do other costumes that have this amount of like resources because I think this movie definitely had a lot of money behind it and I think that gives you the opportunity to have such a big workshop. So to have, you know, so much time, kind of time available, resources available, and I don't think a lot of the movies we have nowadays have that type of money behind it, let alone like digital ones. And so I don't think, you know, I think one reason this movie looks so great in terms of the costumes is because they did have the money to replicate everything in a physical form. And then they worked with Weta to like, um, I'm assuming digitize is maybe the right word. But I don't think a lot of digital movies have that opportunity, time-wise and or money-wise. And so I can't help but think like what other projects we could have in the future that could have this level of kind of like artistry behind it. Um, yeah, so I think that's something interesting to explore. And I think having this movie nominated, I think will put it kind of in the forefront of people's minds to start thinking about that in terms of what's possible with kind of costumes and technology, and when you combine the two.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Austin. I think it's James. I think it's James Cameron. He just likes like a tactile thing first. Like he requested that they were real things first. And then he has to like, I mean, they made the movie three times. They made it once where they shot the actors doing everything. Then they edited it, and then they like would then put it into Weta and then to make it like CGI. So they would watch like everything in the water. They would watch all the capes. They would watch the headdresses like move. They would like feel the weight of every item. I mean, it's insane. And even Varang, Liz, that you talked about, I loved that villain too. She was incredible. And originally, she was supposed to be like super minimal. She was supposed to have like one costume the whole movie. She changed so many times. They watched her like acting in it, and they're like, no, 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 no. They like scrapped it. They like redid her whole costume. She had such a presence about her, and like the way she moved that they just were like, make it big, make it bigger. I mean, she just demanded that attention when she was acting, and I just think that's so cool that they then can like pivot. Like they weren't like pigeonholed to one thing or an idea. They kept it really organic and they like followed the lead of like the actors, and then that then informed the costume, which I'm a big fan of James Cameron too, and just he demands that like perfection and that vision, and then everyone that follows suit is then also trying to like follow in those footsteps of just like, I mean, perfection doesn't exist, but just making it the best and most believable world that they can, which it really comes to life. I mean, I hope you guys saw it on big screen because, oh my God, you should not see that on a plane.
I also like I love projects that make us kind of dial back like even in the world, whenever you're world building and really like another world building, you have to, I mean, like the ground zero of it all is like, why do we wear what we wear? Why does anybody on Pandora put any kind of adornment or clothing on? You know, like what is the point? And it really, I think the choices that they made, um, and you know, that Deb made are so aligned where if you kind of look back, you know, tens of thousands of years ago, the beginning of human history, like what things that we're first finding are beads and, you know, skirts with like adornment all over it. And it really kind of makes you it reevaluate and rethink the way clothing, like the dawn of clothing in our own society. And I can just imagine those like big conceptual um, brainstorms at the beginning and how, you know, she would pulled research and thought about why do these different groups on Pandora dress how they dress? Why does one, you know, choose this kind of element over another? And then what does that say about how clothing functions? And um, yeah, I love the opportunity in projects to get into the weeds on all of that.
Yeah, it is exciting to see a project where you get to see a form of like textiles and resources that we like have not seen, like you're saying, in thousands of years. And to see them like on a big screen in kind of their rawest form is really nice, and refreshing. And again, just something that not many movies get to explore and explore with this kind of level of time and money behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the dream.
Yeah.
I want to follow up on something, Austin, that you brought up concerning the future of digitization and costume design, but by looking at the past and specifically the Avatar series and its relationship with the Oscars. Now, why the Oscars happen is more than we're going to try to solve on this podcast, but it is interesting to me. I had to pull it up. The original Avatar, 9 nominations, 3 wins, mostly in sort of the technical categories, although it did win production design, what they called art direction at the time. And then Way of Water, nominated for production design, but didn't win. They ended up winning visual effects, 4 nominations in total. This one, only 2 nominations. Is the first time that costume design has been up. Now, I know when we talked with the production design folks, they had similar comments about the amount of work it takes, even in that digital world, to make the production design work. And you're saying something similar here, but on some sense, we're getting a Avatar fatigue, if you will, that the nominations have been dropping. What is it about costume design that we think broke out on this one? Is there anything particularly different from the others, or are just people realizing more of the work that was always there and finally we're recognizing it?
Um, it could be a combo of things. I do think that on this one, again, because it's the third one, we had more money, you had more time to explore these things. I'm guessing that between the second and the first film that they were able to make a lot more on this, and you're exploring different types of clans in this one as well. So I think you're seeing a lot more usage of different textiles, different stones, beadworks, weaving, whatever it may be. So I think you're just getting a lot more visually. I also would think that maybe there's a bit more behind the scenes work on this one in terms of showing the process, which I think is important because I think one thing maybe about um, just digital art forms in general, but specifically when it comes to, I think, movies, is that the costumes are kind of like an out of sight, out of mind thing for people. Like, I don't think that a lot of people, like, same thing with like, what is it, stop action movies. Like, I don't think people think that there were costume designers behind those costumes, but they are like there are, even though they're like, little like 3-inch costumes, the art designers behind that. So I think
Hmm.
sometimes, unless it's like a physical costume being presented in front of you, I don't think people necessarily equate that there's still a designer behind that. But again, that's why I think this is great that it's getting nominated because I think it's giving Deborah obviously the kudos she deserves for doing not just this one, but the other ones as well. So I'm hoping that again there are other movies that come about where we do get the chance to like work on, these digital projects and also get to make like the costumes behind it as well. Um, but yeah, I think it's probably a combo of a few different things, but great that it's happened finally.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
worry, oh, sorry, Allison, please.
No, I was gonna say I agree.
Yeah, and like I agree it's really monumental, and I hope to some extent there was a general feeling behind the scenes of like, no, like I feel like I've seen more featurettes with her on this project. I've seen more PR come behind her, and rightfully so. And I hope that there was this sort of, wait a minute, like don't, and especially with the breadth of work and everything you mentioned, Austin and Allison. And I, I think also with digital work, there can be I worry about the loss of the hand of the artist, which I think is interestingly very present in a lot of the other films we're going to talk about. You really feel the costume designer's hand in a lot of the projects. And I think probably due to the way James Cameron treated the work that, you outlined, Allison, we didn't it wasn't as lost here in this project. We really felt either it was the technology got better or the way he insisted on the tactile, something came together here where I really I felt the material and the craft and the history of these people and the costume more.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn our attention to the second film on our list. That is Frankenstein, costume design by Kate Hawley.
Kate did a great job. I'll just start off with that. So her and Guillermo did Crimson Peak together, which was a couple years ago. And I think they both just have a great knack for this kind of gothic, dark romanticism um, kind of genre of film. And so I think seeing the film and like kind of just breaking down all of the costumes, I think starting off with like Elizabeth, who Mia Goth played, and she also played Claire Frankenstein or Victor's mom. I think their use of like red throughout the whole entire film was really great. I think they naturally, like both of them, have a very strong and like very um, select use of color. And so I think when you're like looking at her costumes, you're like seeing the hints of red that like linger back towards Victor and kind of his love for his mom. And I think he also keeps those reds throughout his costume. But specifically with hers, you kind of get like hints of it, as well as the like exploration of blues and greens, which also highlight her kind of fascination and her like kind of interest in nature and like how important that is to her. And I think that really does kind of carry out throughout the film when you see her kind of journey parallel to Victor's and his like obsession with Frankenstein and the monster and kind of this human exceptionalism. And so as they're kind of exploring, as we're exploring Elizabeth's costume, kind of arc and seeing Victor's, I think it's like um, a very just like intricate use of color as well as like textures. One thing that Guillermo talked about when it comes to Victor was that he wanted him to look like a rock star. Like he wanted him to be seen as an artist and less of a scientist, which I think is very interesting because you have to have some scientific kind of like aspect to when you're trying to create, a monster. You're trying to bring some sort of like inanimate object to life. But I think then to explore this kind of artistic element to him, specifically with his like costumes, I think that was really interesting to watch kind of evolve on screen, specifically with his like two-piece striped kind of velvet suit he wore like once he got the money from the donor, and then like seeing him in his like plaid pants and suspenders when he was like in his laboratory. I think, you know, seeing those kind of use of subtle prints and patterns, but those are very like they have a very like rich history with like the punk scene and kind of with rock stars in general. Um, so that was interesting. I do think that other prints that they used back to Elizabeth were very special, mainly because Kate talked about the prints being like custom, which is again, I think something that most projects, unless you have a lot of time in your hands, custom prints are not an easy thing to do, nor something that we really have time to do. But they really explored like beetle prints and kind of like ripples of water, like ripples of blood, specifically with her like her green dress. And so I just think like the print usage throughout this whole entire film was really, really interesting. I think gave the costumes a lot of life. Um, and then for the monster, Frankenstein, he really, you know, we only got to see him kind of in one costume throughout the film other than his prosthetics, but that one coat he was wearing was said to like um, have been picked up when you see in the film from like a dead soldier. And I guess if you really look at the costume, there's like a imprint of a spine down the back, which is, you know, something that is super kind of small in detail, but I think really plays uh, kind of a good part in the story of just the relation of him um and the coat and like as he's wearing it and like as it's forming to his body and he's collecting all the pelts throughout his journey and the coat kind of like builds in texture to where you see him at the end of the film. Um I think it's a good kind of parallel to like him being born out of uh like human love, I guess, from Victor, but also human turmoil and war because the coat, you know, obviously the coat's from a dead soldier and it's kind of like a full circle moment for him in a way. Uh, but yeah, it was a great film. I think she did a fantastic job in the costumes. It's really fun seeing them both kind of collaborate again on something, and I hope there's another romantic film coming out at some point between the two of them.
I agree with Austin. The use of color for me was just so impactful and not necessarily period accurate, but it's just like a stylized choice and it's so bold and I think they're both really good at just kind of capturing the romance and the the drama, the drama of it. Because I mean, so many of my friends were just texting me pictures of the costumes after watching that movie. And I was like, I'm glad that you thought of me. I'm also glad that that spoke to you and that, you know, it gave you a feeling. And, you know, I love that because to have like an emotional reaction to something like visual is like what we want. Like, you know, sometimes we want costumes to go away and you don't want to think about them and be focused on the story and the character, but this was like a beautiful thing where you could like do both. And also a big fan of it. I thought it was super successful. I also love the costumes in Crimson Peak. So I like seeing two collaborators work together again because clearly it worked
Mhm.
and you see the outcome. And also then you know that it's a good, healthy work environment in some way of just like, you know, they can collaborate and you know, the execution is successful. And also I know that the characters really loved like getting into their costumes and like making it feel like their skin. And so yeah, I think it was a successful endeavor. And I really loved watching it. It made me happy. And also getting the text before that, I was like, oh, spoiler, I didn't see the movie yet. I don't want to see the costumes yet. But yeah, no, I really loved it. And I also kind of, I mean, you can go kind of both ways with like historical accuracy and like you can really nerd out and make it really authentic and real, but I kind of love when things are more stylized and just made a little bit for the modern eye sometimes because it kind of makes it its own. And Frankenstein is it's a weird surreal story anyway, so to make it a little more fantastical and to kind of have it in this like dream state with these like pops of crazy colors and just it made sense for just the tone of the movie, and I think just collectively it was really successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had the same reaction of my like family and friends who are not involved in the industry at all. Like, have you seen the Frankenstein
Yeah.
costumes? And yeah, there is something I totally that's such a great point. There's something really like, yeah, when costumes kind of reach across and pull the public in a way that is, yeah, that is like purely fantastical and a real like artistic move. And there was something I felt about Frankenstein, like the reception of it for some reason felt very zeitgeisty. I feel like, there was something about the way it kind of hit the public and then everyone, talking about the clothes and Kate was everywhere that for some reason was just like pitch perfect for the moment. And that, the movie is so the costumes are, I mean, it's capital C in that movie, the way they function visually. And she knocked it out of the park. Yeah, incredible.
I do wonder if part of the like the zeitgeist moment of it is because she knows like the rules and guidelines of period clothing, but does not follow them exactly and kind of did her own thing. Because I do
Hmm.
wonder if it would have maybe connected with people as much if it was maybe a little too period in terms of like,
Hmm.
especially in terms of like the colors, not so much the shapes, but I think maybe in terms of the colors, if that would have, you know, kind of push people away a little bit. Because there's always that like, I don't know who said it first, but that sentiment of like you can break the rules as long as you know like
Hmm.
what they were at some point. Kind
Right.
of that line. But I do, yeah, I wonder if maybe that plays into like, how why it resonated so well with people.
It's so it's interesting to me to think about Frankenstein in like a conversation with Nosferatu from last
Mhm.
year. And it almost feels like, which I also think hit, but what treated, was
Yeah.
totally on the other end of the spectrum in terms of like fantasy, realism, but then, taking a taking a stroke in a different direction. It almost felt like Frankenstein was the release, and
Yeah.
Nosferatu had a lot of like tension,
Yeah.
rightfully so. And then the costumes in Frankenstein, yeah, it was like an explosion and a release of all that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, because it could go like really dark and creepy, but
Mhm.
it went more like soft and like fairy tale. I mean, in a way, and also just like beautiful, like oh, like a runway moment. It was just like a lot of things, um, and I think also when you just dress someone head to toe. Oh, and then the pairings of the colors, the
Mhm.
Hmm.
pairings of the colors, or like adding the certain gloves, or like I was really just into like all of that. I was like, oh, beautiful. It's like taking notes, like
Hmm.
mentally. But
Well,
yeah, I mean, she's great with color. I was like, get it.
yeah. I was going back.
Texture. Yeah.
Yeah, well, sorry, why were we saying this?
No, I was just saying in texture. I did a TV show in Canada that started up right as Frankenstein was wrapping, and we took a lot of their textiles, not
Mhm.
the custom, but the sort of the wools and everything was so sumptuously textured down to just, the whatever you're using for the trousers had a hand.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really showed through on screen.
Yeah. Back to what you were saying about like the release from Nosferatu, it is such a stark thing of like characters because you have Nosferatu who was not really warm at all and kind of did not show really any type of range of emotions or humanity. And then you have such a stark difference with Frankenstein, who was so kind of raw and apathetic and kind and like was such a, I think, especially for now, I think we're in a very strange time in our world. I think having a creature on screen that is exploring these very raw emotions, and I think these emotions that I think a lot of people have forgotten about or don't care to explore. And I think seeing somebody on screen explore those things as well as like Elizabeth kind of, you know, I think she's explored a lot of it, and I think is very true to who she is and about being curious um, about the world and having her, issues with war and like kind of human turmoil, and then seeing them both together on screen, I think was really nice and definitely very, very different from kind of the Nosferatu, the
Mhm.
Nosferatu characters.
Oh, and don't you think his makeup was really beautiful?
Oh,
Like
so
it's like
beautiful.
horrifically like the
Mhm.
scars and everything, but it's beautiful. So then everything's just kind of like a beautiful horror.
Yes. Yeah. And the colors too, like this, like
Oh,
the pale blue was
oh,
very, very nice.
oh, loved it. I know
Yeah.
all my makeup friends were like gushing.
Mm,
As did our panel over the prosthetics and the makeup in
mm.
this film.
Oh yeah.
Well, we're going to move on to the third film on our list. That's Hamnet, costume design by Malgosia Terzanska.
What a beautiful movie. This is Malgosia's first time working with Chloe. And it's what's interesting is they actually have a history together. I believe they went to NYU together. They've tried to work together, and this is the first time that it's sort of lined up. And I we often, I think, talk about how a lot of the nominated costume designers have worked with their collaborators for years and years, projects and projects, even within this grouping this year. And so it's remarkable to me, and really speaks to Malgosia's just talent that this was a first time collaboration and how unbelievably in sync I felt the costume design was within the broader aesthetic context of the movie. I really um, feel like, I mean, this is a very intimate movie. This is there are bigger scenes with, extras, etc., but this is mostly an intimate story of a very well-known character, Shakespeare. And um, so, but within that kind of quiet intimacy, I think the costumes and the production design in this film really are central storytellers. There's a real economy of dialogue. There's a lot of quiet moments. There's a lot of story that happens in static shots. And the journey that the costumes go on, in particular, the color palette in the film goes on, I think is just really exciting and a really wonderful use of costume design in film. Malgosia has talked about, um, I mean, similar to Frankenstein in that needing to have a really exacting handle on the period, and then within that, understanding the rules of the period, as she put it, and then being able to understand where they wanted to sort of bend and really kind of minimize things, I think. And in doing that, we have the shapes, we have the general styling, let's say, but it's really like a textile and color forward costume plot. And it's almost like I felt like Malgosia was using a sewing machine as a paintbrush. I mean, these costumes are so beautifully gestural. And the reason why that works is because it's so in sync with how the film is shot and designed from every other angle and department. Um, and I mean, a couple of techniques that she used, she really kept the textiles as natural as possible, linens and bark cloth. There was a reduced plot for each character. A lot of the characters didn't change which would have been true to the time, and at the budget level, um, so to speak. And she used this idea. What was interesting to me in sort of reading about her process for this film is that she originally, I think they had thought of brown for the Anya's character. And that kind of uh, morphed into red, and thinking about that character as a sort of berry, a fruit of nature. And as the tragedy of the story unfolds and they lose their child, it it sort of morphs from a like a bright, fertile berry to more of a scab and bruised color by the end. Um, and then for Shakespeare, which, by the way, like the pressure of costuming Shakespeare, the character. I mean, this is somebody that's in everybody's brain. You've thought of what he looks like. Maybe we're all thinking of Joseph Fiennes. But to be able to kind of just take ownership of that character and take a really confident stab at it is amazing. They kept him in blues. He had more of kind of a watery intonation to his character. And I know that they wanted him to keep him feeling athletic and bodily and with a lot of movement. And his color across the film also deepened, and became more saturated. And then by the end, it's actually completely fallen out. It has like sort of desaturated to his ghost character on stage, but they also sort of deepened the slashes and his in on his back, and taken really kind of gestural artistic moves with these characters and with the costumes. And has to be a real confidence there to be able to do that, to sort of be able to kind of put a mark, I think, on the costume design in a way that is characterful, but also just purely artistic, I think is exciting. And I think, uh, the last thing I would just say is I love when costume designers have to do costumes within within a project. There's the costumes on the stage for the ultimate, performance at the end of the movie. Malgosia had this incredible idea and process where she used latex paint over the linen and the bark cloth, and it gave this real like oily veneer, and it allowed her within the folds of the costumes to skip points. So you'd see the negative, you'd see the sort of untouched cloth underneath the latex paint. And that's obviously a modern, contemporary material. It's not, something born of the natural point of view that they were using originally. But it has such a beautiful effect, an emotional effect, because it kind of cancels out the textile in a way. Um, and yeah, all those choices are born out of confidence and collaboration and a real kind of like mastery of your material. And so, I'm so excited for her. I've known her for a while, and she's having an incredible year. So, so great, so deserved.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you pointed out the color just like evolution. I was with my friend and she would not stop talking about it. She's like, "Oh my God, they're getting more faded. I was like, "Great. I'm glad you noticed."
Yeah.
But she just like wanted to share it with me because she doesn't do costumes. But then I also heard that Chloe actually had their colors based on like chakras. And so that's
Mm.
why they were each a different color, because she was trying to like evoke a certain emotion and like headspace and like where they were, if it was their heart or their head and their mind and their sky. And it was just, I like when I say
Love
this like
that.
loosely, I like when directors have like a point of view, but then they let you like run with it.
Hmm.
It's like start with like a baseline of like a point of view, but then like let me interpret that how I see fit. And so I thought that was like once again great teamwork, and like, oh, I like that there's a conceptual idea that represents something that's going to be like this, like runs through the whole film, but comes from like a real like strong point in like the storyline and like their characters and their development. And just like, the devastation of like, their son. So I really appreciated it. And I think my algorithm knew I was like really into Hamnet at the time. So it just kept pouring all this like information onto me. It just like about every little detail. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Because they don't, they don't change a lot,
Mhm.
she's like a woman of the woods, and he's like this eccentric writer. So what they do wear is like really important. So it has to be right. So I really, really loved it too.
I appreciated just how graphically minimal the costumes were in this.
Mhm.
Like they were just minimal, but because she like paired it with like strong, like minimal texture choices,
Mm.
like they just worked so well um throughout the whole project. And like, there was not a lot of fuss, there was not a ton of like variation in shape and or layering, but I think just because of like the color choices and the strong texture choices for each of their costumes, it just worked really, really well. Yeah, they were just really strong choices. And yeah, the whole latex painting on the costumes for the theater production was great. That was a really, really strong choice in terms of reworking a textile in a different way, and not by like, something that costs a lot of money, or, that I think um, is this big process, but like enough for it to change and kind of give us all a reaction and a feeling about it. Uh, yeah, she did a great job. She did a really great job. Also, like red as like the choice of color for her because she is such, the giver of life in that movie and like kind of the center of life in that movie. And to have that like paired in like the very saturated green woods, um, is very smart of them.
Mhm.
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 Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
lack of adornment and accessory in that movie is actually like hearing you talk, Austin, it didn't now that I think about it, it's shocking
Yeah.
actually. And
Nothing.
so interesting to talk about it after Frankenstein, because they're both very successful institute, but it's like um uh yeah, I mean, sometimes and there's just it's like a very vulnerable actually. It's kind of a vulnerable costume design. I like a way to approach it because there's no, I mean, n not even a trim, nary a trim in sight. And so yeah, really kind of refreshing to and interesting.
Vulnerable is a really good way to put it, actually, because I feel like you're removing all these extra pieces that,
Yeah.
um, there's a decision behind everything, but like having it removed and just essentially being like this very raw, bare person in front of you on screen. Um, that's a very interesting way to think about it, and I think it's very like accurate and true for the story.
Yeah, because I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that needs a necklace or something, like, or I'm like, da, 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 da. Like I
Yeah.
have a, there's an anxiety about does it need this? Da, da, da. And when you're creating something from scratch, I mean,
Mhm.
you both obviously know, like it could be anything, and you could
Yeah.
finish it in any way, and and to not to the choice to just let it breathe, and
Mhm.
yeah, uh. Kudos to her. Like, I don't know if I have the strength. Throw a trim on it. But good for her. Awesome.
I think that with a film like this set during this Renaissance period, there is a challenge, I would imagine, in the sense that the viewing public, whether sophisticated or not, has sort of a preconception about what the clothes looked like. And I mean, to the point that how do you avoid it looking costumey or Renaissance fair? Some of it you may have addressed in the things you've already said, but how present is that awareness of what the unsophisticated audience might notice or be attracted to when you start something like this?
I'll just quickly say, and I don't know if this completely answers it, like for me, it has to feel like the actors are what take it over the line. That like meaning take it into over the line into truth. Like their ability to employ what they're wearing and to feel to watch Jessie Buckley and to be like, yeah, that's her, that's her frock. Like that, she is totally at home in it. She feels she's carrying herself with whatever she's carrying herself. I think what to me when it's, and why I often actually don't feel this way watching Renaissance era film, is that if you start to feel the discomfort or the sort of you feel that coming across from the character, from the actor, then it starts to feel like the way people, people going to Renaissance fair just like slapped on that costume that day. I mean, no shade, but like, there's a little discomfort. There's a little like, ooh, here we are, in our stuff. And like, but like they just I the they she did such a great job like with their characterization and meeting them where they are. And I know for the Shakespeare character there was like a request to make sure he felt kind of a little debonair and like he could move and he could roll the sleeves in a way that did they roll the sleeves that way? I mean, I don't know, but it because he was able to employ his costume and sort of feel really at home in it, that's what helps me get over the edge of like, oh, I'm in it with you. I believe this as a thing. Um, yeah.
This,
Yeah.
oh, do you want to go, Allison?
Oh, go ahead, Austin.
I would say the same kind of question and concept of like audience relation to whatever the art form is came up with like fashion magazines. And I think the argument still like holds true to this is that I think as designers, as directors, I think it is our job in a way to lead people in a direction um like aesthetically or like taste wise. And I think with both of them, because their decisions are so strong and they're very confident in their decisions, I think whether it's more period accurate or not as accurate, I still think it gives you an emotional reaction, which is I think what people gravitate more towards in a movie necessarily than going to see something that's like they want to go see a piece that's like set in like 1763. I think they're interested in probably the time period, but I think they're more interested in like the characters, not putting on all these extra trims. And I think maybe that's why it gravitated so well. It's just kind of a combination of all those things versus like putting stuff out there and then I guess expecting or I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys hit on like really accurate points because ultimately, because Chloe, she like adapted it, right? The screenplay. Am I correct?
Yeah, it
It's
was a
from a
book.
book. Yes.
It
She
was a
worked
book,
with
but
the
then did she
author
help?
to do the screenplay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, in a way that's like Chloe's story and just it's just like the rawness of it and just that movie. I remember before I saw it, everyone's like, beware, Allison, you're a mother. I was like, what? I had no idea what the movie's about. So I didn't realize what was going to happen. Because I tend to not watch previews, so I'm just like completely objective. So I didn't know that it was like a tearjerker. And everyone's like, it resonates with people and you can't help but cry. And so I went in kind of like knowing that and then knowing just that Chloe likes just like that essence of like people and humanity and love and the simplicity of it. It just stripped away everything. And so I think if that's if that's like the base of where you're starting from, I'm sure the costumes have to you can't be distracted by anything. I mean, she like lives I mean, she has a house, but she like lives at the tree. You know what I mean? Like she's just a woman of the wild and you have to just believe it. You have to believe she sleeps in it, she wakes up in it. And then when they go to the play and just all those real people, and I love I actually love when people are dirty during period films because I'm like, they were not clean.
Yes.
You
Yes.
did not take showers. You could not brush your teeth. Like only the wealthy did that. And they didn't even do it that often. And so I love when they're just dirty because they would be dirty. And I think that is part of the great thing about period storytelling because that is actually accurate. And then their clothes would be dirty. So, So I just love that she embraced it, and you weren't like distracted that everyone was dirty, but there's like a rawness about it and a realness that I think comes across in like a very subtle, like beautiful like way, with everyone's fingers and their teeth and their hair. And oh God, her wig was amazing.
Hmm.
I like thought she had grown her hair out, and I'm always like so distracted by
Oh,
like wig
yeah.
lines. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh my God, that wasn't her hair. She's really short hair. And I was like, wow, because her hair just like married right into that dress. And I mean, I just believed it. I believed everything about it. Yeah, I loved it too. I didn't cry though. I can't believe I didn't cry.
I
I
didn't
know,
cry.
and I know they're like, you're a mother. I was like, oh, I didn't cry. I
Yeah.
was I think I don't know. I think I would have cried if I was alone, from the beginning to the end, and the end really got to me. But the play was like, yeah, when the white paint and everything, and yeah. I also like how she used things in life that they would have used, like even when the kids were putting on the play, like putting buckets and baskets and just like really thinking about what they had, because you wouldn't have things like you had to bake your bread for the day, you had to do everything, like things aren't accessible. So I loved that, watching that. It was just cohesive the whole time, I thought.
Hmm.
Kids' costumes were great. Like
Oh
speaking of like the graphicness, like they were such the way they used the everyday objects on the costumes specifically. I
yeah.
was like, oh, this is fantastic. Like it was they're those kids' costumes were kind of one of the highlights of the entire film.
Yeah.
All right. Our fourth nominee is Marty Supreme, costume design by Miyako Belize.
So I believe that Miyako has worked on all of the Safdie brothers projects, if not most, if not all. I'm pretty sure it's all. And and one of the things she has mentioned in the past is that they are both, Josh and Benny are both very involved and opinionated about costumes. And um, there's nothing like when you have like director involvement like that, there's nothing like having a shorthand with them. You know, that having that trust and that ability from them, but also the ability to have, frank conversations and interpret needs and wants and desires, and then be able to kind of go through the process together of fittings and redoing things or not, there sometimes I think when you work with collaborators like that in the beginning, there can be a like, well, does that person get what I want? Or, I thought you got it, or, is this going in the right direction? And when you're able to like sitting into that creative collaboration over time and over different projects, I think is um, that's why, to me, in some ways, this collaboration between Miyako and Josh Safdie feels like a real crowning achievement of their, like it really feels they feel so in sync. Like the auteur and the designer feel like they are right there together, and as they have in the past. But this is such a massive undertaking. And part of why this is such a massive undertaking is I'm pretty sure they were extremely serious about historical accuracy down to the underpinnings and, really took the position that no shortcuts were going to be taken. If it wasn't vintage, it was going to be built, and if it was built, it was going to be built, authentically. Um, and that is, yeah, and there, this design plot is spanning different cities. It's obviously set in 1952, which is that's going to take a little bit from the, beginning of the 50s, but then uh really lean on the 40s. I mean, you're spanning such a real kind of like wide geographical setting, and then also a really post-war intense time period. And then on top of that, she is still able to go in and have a really like beautiful stylist hand to it in that, you know, um, and really get at some characterful choices, and have feel like you're seeing a real like designer point of view on how outfits and ensembles are put together and styled. And um, that is really, I feel like an achievement in that, trying to balance, I think, all of these needs of the production in terms of, a lot of creative opinion and direction, and then the time period, and then having it still, look like a real, like a point of view, like you have something to say on what's happening in terms of costume and fashion in the movie. And um, I think that the other thing that I really the other thing to say is that even within these this approach to this sort of like documentary driven realism, uh, she still has these just like banger frames where this one um this scene where Marty is on the bed in the hotel room with this like just pitch perfect robe that is like dilapidated but feels of the scene and hanging off of him perfectly. The moment where we see Gwyneth Paltrow's character look up as she's walking up the steps and she has this black veil and this perfectly minimal white overlayer with this sort of white under button top or dress, whatever that was. It's just so iconic. And then the images of Marty running through the streets of the Lower East Side in this like absolutely perfect brown suit. I think the suiting in this movie is its own achievement and triumph, and the way in which they made styling choices on um, uh, Timmy in order to sort of broaden his shoulders, the way clothing hung off of him, the cooler tone palette, the lack of patterning on him for the most part, all those little, the way his pants hung. I mean, there's like millions of choices happening, the hem of his pants, all these sort of little the decision to not give him collar stays, and sometimes his collar is sort of like askew in a characterful way. I mean, all of these um we all know, the three of us know, like how many decisions you're making every day, and this movie in particular just felt like so, just incredible achievement in that way. And uh, a kind of fresh approach again to period costuming in that you can be accurate and still achieve your voice and a sort of like styly in a like a stylistic way, and again, I would just say a movie that felt very aligned fashion wise with the zeitgeist in terms of like what's in style. It's wonderful that you can kind of take a shot of Timothy Chalamet and be like, you could buy that at Zara right now. They didn't, but it's so cool to be able to look to your central character and feel inspired in terms of fashion. Um, and yeah, I mean, again, another beautiful job.
She did a great job on it. And I think what you were mentioning about like just the menswear in this, I think this movie is just like kind of a great kind of little like expose of menswear from that time. And I think it also kind of highlights how well casting can work with costuming. Because I think when you look at Timothy's body, he has a very, I think, appropriate male body for that time period. Because I think now our male bodies are very, very different from what it was back during that era. And so I think menswear just really also works so well with his body, especially when you're tailoring it and making it for that time period. And so I think just like having him on there and all these different outfits from that era just was like it was a really, really great way, I think, to show off the clothing. And I think he kind of just wore it all exceptionally well. And I do think back to what you're saying about the zeitgeist, I think the whole like concept of like the cult of the icon with him is very funny because he can market something really, really well. And I think he just really found a very kind of now way of marketing this movie. It's very much like how Charlie XCX kind of marketed Brat and how her movie is coming out now. It feels very much in that how he was just able to like market it in his whole way through social media and going on like guest appearances and the whole thing with like the jacket. You know, it's like not too often we get a costume that kind of steps out of the screen and is able to make its way into like a physical form within people's kind of current day closets. And I think having that happen is just really fun to see. Uh, and kind of just see like costume design kind of get more recognition in that way as well, because it's very rare that we get kind of, you know, recognition outside of the film and TV business and into like the fashion business, fast fashion business, wherever it is. Um, so yeah, that was great to see. So I hope Miyako is happy with that aspect of it as well.
Yeah. And she just has like a really good eye and like a great sense of fashion. And I think you're right, Liz. Like she did go like period accurate, but in a great style. Like, but 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 like a classic, like sophisticated style. And I think also it's like a very aspirational, especially since like, double-breasted suits are in fashion. And like you were saying, Austin, I agree that his body type was just like a dream. Like how lucky to have him, the in real life, like that ping pong player did have like a small form or like a slender form, but it does matter. I know that that can be a good challenge for us if casting doesn't align with maybe the right like for the character. So to have that marriage is really wonderful. And then yeah, then she's clearly talented because she made it work and she made all those right choices like you were saying. And you know, you just want to wear like high-waisted like pleated pants now. Like seeing that, you're just like, yes, that is the look. So yeah, and also it's just good once again, like with the storytelling, like watching something and you just believe it all. You don't think it's you're in it, and that's a lot of people to dress. That's a lot of different places to cover, and that's a lot of work. So yeah, it's another good nomination for sure.
Well, we're going to move on to our fifth film. One more into the mix. That is Sinners, costume design by Ruth E. Carter.
Okay, I mean, I'm a little bit, this is subjective to me, but I think this is like one of my favorite movies of this year. When I saw it, it just was very solid, like hands down. I was like, oh, I think it's beautiful. I love the storyline. I like that it's original. Like, you know, just separately, I just really was a fan. And then Ruth has like a long history with Ryan, the director. She won 2 Academy Awards with Black Panther, and then like the Wakanda Forever Black Panther. Um, and they've just worked together for a long time, and she's clearly been around. I mean, she's very experienced, and I think she was like the right person to do this film for Ryan because like she fell in love with just like all the historical, background and research that they had to do for 1932 Mississippi Delta, and then also just I know that I think she like did a lot of research and all like the photography back then with like the blues singers and just because it's kind of like a musical movie in a way too because the the jukebox joint is just like the whole point of the movie. Like they're trying to open this, and I just love that she took all of that knowledge of like Americana in the 30s and then the music and the working class. And then I know that she pulled a lot of the colors from that. Like for her, it was kind of like an American story, like, red, white, and blue. But when you watch it, it's not like red, white, and blue. It's like pinks. It's like indigos. they're faint like hues of these colors, but once again, like there is a concept behind it all, and it's coming from something like much deeper, and um which then I think just strengthens the storytelling within the costume design, because the viewer might not know all of that, but like you're secretly conceptioned like with all this like backstory, and you don't even know why. uh and this movie was really impressive because it's a horror film. Just the amount of multiples that they had to make, uh like 90% of the movie was made from scratch because they couldn't get blood on any rentals. And I just think they like bought a little bit. There's 1932, which is the base of the movie, and then there's like when in the jukebox joint they're like seeing things from other eras, and then at the end of the movie there's 1992. So there's just a whole span of just different time periods that they had to research. And the main girl that ends up dying inside the jukebox joint, I think she had like 20 of those silk dresses. um so just like the sheer amount of just all the multiples, and then to make those decisions at such a, I know that their prep time wasn't like that long, like considering the amount that they had to make, but to make those decisions and then like solidify it, and then to like go into all the malts, like that is a big commitment, and like you just have to have like a strong point of view and like fully committed. And Ryan, I know also him and Chloe had the same thing, like Smoke was blue and Stack was red, and he just wanted those two characters in two different colors because they're twins and they're like two different types of men. And she just kind of had to run with it too. And she had to like go from New Orleans back to LA, and she like found the hats, and then like Ryan loved them, and they had to find all the right fabrics. And even watching it, it made so much sense because they're in like this really hot New Orleans weather, and they're wearing like really heavy fabrics like wool and houndstooth, and it's like Chicago boys. They're from like these cold weather climates, but they're going back to this place where they want to like reconnect with the locals. And it just makes so much sense seeing all these other people wearing workwear and then sweating and the cottons, and then they're the other brothers in like fancy like Italian suits because he's more of a gangster, and the other one is, I mean, they both were in the war and soldiers, but it's just the storytelling and the character development. It was really strong too. Watching that and just separating the two, because that's really hard, and you want to make that character like believe that they are two separate people. So I thought that was really successful too. And then just all the detail too. Like the one brother, uh, the gangster brother, which one's the gangster brother? Stack. Oh yeah, Stack's the gangster, and Smoke is like the more working class. But Stack wears like a soft collar shirt, and he wears like he's like a grill in his teeth, and he wears a lot of gold, and he's just flaunting everything. And then the other brother, he wears like a detachable collar, and it's like 1932. He's just like stuck in this like old mindset, and he's okay to just be like a little bit more poor, and he doesn't want to wash his whole shirt. He only wants to wash like the collars. And it's a lot of details that I think were just great. And then just in terms of the continuity was just fantastic because it's so bloody like through the rest of the movie, and they shot it all out of order, and it rained a lot there, so they couldn't always do exteriors when they wanted. And it's yeah, I just was like, when I watched that too, I was like, oh, I want to work on that. I was like, I want to do that movie. That looks like so much fun. So yeah, I just applaud her for like just the sheer like magnitude of that movie with all the multiples and dressing, all the people that died and all the later vampires. And yeah, and I think they also have a great relationship that clearly works, and they'll continue to work together. And I'm just always happy to see um great great minds like coming together and trusting each other. And then there's not like fear-based decisions. It's like correct decisions that are right for the character, that that you believe in, and that they trust you. Like you were saying, Liz, that shorthand, which is, it's so nice. And like when you're in it, it's really freeing. So that movie just you could just tell like, oh, right. They knew what they were doing and he trusted her and she, it was great. So I really and also I applaud the aging and dying team. Like that was amazing. Because that was all new and to make it everything look old, it was really successful.
Just the aging, yes. One, the aging was great. I think when we were talking about it back on Hamnet and like how the aging on that was so great, this is another movie where I think like the aging is just spectacular. Um, and I think you can definitely tell the difference between costumes on screen that have not seen like a lick of dirt or like smear anything and costumes that have it on there, but have it in such a way that like your thought is not the clothing is dirty. Your thought is just like it's lived. It's seen like it has just been on somebody's body for a bit. And I think yeah, the aging was great on this. I also think that Ruth is such like a historian, which I know is I think part of like the costume designer's job in general, but you can tell she has such a passion for just diving into culture and nuances between culture. And I think it really is like highlighted when it comes to like small kind of props and accessories on costumes, especially with, I believe her name was Annie. Um, she,
Oh, the hoodoo lady?
yes, the hoodoo
Yes.
lady. Like all her like just like the layering of beads and the small pouches and like the like little pouch that is it, I think is it Smoke that carries it?
Oh yeah, smoke his
Yes, he
because
has
they
a
were
little,
Mhm.
yeah, he has a little pouch on him too. And I just think it's so small things that I can't help but think that she sees from like the wealth of images she's like looking at when she's going into all these different cultures. Um, and then like having those brought to the costumes is such like a special thing. Because I think like as you look through all those historical images, when you're researching, there are so many small things that are so easy to miss unless you like you take the time to look at the images really closely and you I think it's a like more of a I think you get better at it and like faster at it when you do it a lot for a long time. And I think she has done this, obviously she's done this for a long time. And so she knows where to look, how to look at these images and like what items, will kind of read the best on these costumes. So I think that's really exciting to see is a movie that has so many different kind of like cultural time periods, especially within the dance hall. And to just kind of see her research and then how it kind of then reflects into her physical costumes.
I also loved like being able to do exactly that, but then also I loved how the palette felt very neutral and sort of skin forward in a way, which I think did was able to like one definitely would felt period accurate. Like number two, like made those color choices for Smoke and Stack and really pop, okay, blue, red, I'm registering it. And then also provided just such a like great palette for the blood. But the sort of like tonal color pale choices that she used for Haley Steinfeld's character, that like incredible tank top choice on Michael B. Jordan. I mean, like, um, the just really like kind of underscored the physicality, the fleshiness, the horror of the body, like all of those that come forward in like a music meets vampire story, and or dance hall makes vampire, like all of that. And it was subtle because we're thinking like it just works so beautifully with the time period and the sort of silk and the wool and the cotton and the knits, like it all just sort of it with the color palette and then moving into the crescendo of what happens, like it all just worked together so beautifully. um and also, I think really served the way they lit the film, which was like, yeah, to me, just felt really harsh decisions with lighting, and really stylistic decisions of like heavy saturation meets desaturation, and um, And so yeah, just all it works so beautifully together. In a way that maybe like on the rack, it's not like it's a real trust moment, to sort of see the way this is all going to come together and the way it's sort of going to work in concert uh, with everything going on. Like at the outset, you're kind of looking at, like it really it comes to life within the context of the film, if that makes sense, like on the screen. Uh, um, and yeah, just so juicy.
For Sinners, particularly the 16 nominations they received, really does speak to that collaboration. That being said, you've helped outline strong cases for all 5 of these films. Setting aside the Oscar race, though, are there additional films from 2025 any of you would like to recognize for costume design?
Mm.
I mean, I also, I mean, it's hard because like Wicked and then the Wicked 2, like, I don't know, like, but it's still, I don't know, it's like still another movie. I mean, that was really impressive. So I would say that one.
Wicked
It's
for Good.
interesting because I think that created a little bit of chatter, right? I think there are people who are, I mean, not to get into the drama weeds on it,
Yeah.
but like, I do think it's nice to talk. I mean, obviously, Paul Tazwell, like, like won the Oscar, like, uh, incredible work. It is nice to talk about movies that all so many different kinds of costume design movies that can have an impact that are not just like enormous budget
Hmm.
fantasy, commercial enterprises, and so I totally agree with you, Allison. Of course, in some ways, it's like an elephant in the room, of like, well, it won the Oscar last year. It's like who's to say it couldn't have been even nominated this year? Um, and I will also say it is nice to be able to celebrate and talk about how difficult and like what an achievement all different kinds of projects can be.
All right. Well, listen, on that note, we will call it a riot. Great insights, team. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Skid.
Listeners, the Academy Awards ceremony is nearly upon us, and we've got 2, maybe 3 more episodes in the queue. If you've fallen behind, you still have time to catch up, but there is a bit of urgency. YouTube viewers, given that this is the first time we've published videos, I'd really like to hear what you think. My email address is skid@belowtheline1word.biz. That's B-I-Z. And I'm always grateful for your feedback. Closing credits, thanks to Curtis Five for our music and John Wan for our logo. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. To all of our listeners and YouTubers, I appreciate you. Please rate us wherever you get your podcasts and tell your friends. Thanks again from Below the Line. And thanks again to all of you. We ran a little long, but you guys always have so many great things to say. I just can't cut it off. I really appreciate what you guys brought to this one.
Thank you, Skid.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.